I think the D2C explosion, I think, has been a positive thing for the industry in that it's made a lot of brands take e-commerce more seriously than what they used to. If not so much just to look at the opportunities of online commerce versus offline commerce and realizing that consumers actually shop digitally as well as through offline, even though offline is much larger. There's obviously, of course, the first-party data prize to be won, which is a big thing for a lot of brands that don't possess any data. We're in a bit of a cold shower moment, though, I think, this year, where a lot of brands have been doing D2C because they believe it should be done, because they've been reading about it and seen some success stories like Casper and Warby Parker and Dollar Shave Club, but actually not really thought about what's the benefit to the consumer. And so that cold shower is getting them to sort of take a step back and go, actually, why would a consumer buy through me and not through an offline store or through a third-party retailer like Walmart or Tesco or Carrefour? Because often when you hear these conversations, and again, like you will hear at Cannes many, many times, they'll talk about the benefit for the brand, as in the direct relationship with the consumer, cutting down on costs, not having to deal with retailers directly, but very little about what the benefit is for someone like you or I in terms of actually buying from them versus the convenience of buying through another channel. It's interesting sitting at Cannes and actually you're hearing data still being talked about. It's not a trend that's going away, but it's definitely being deployed differently. And I think that comes largely from the maturity of some of the bigger, particularly CPG brands, using data for the first time. And by data, I don't mean just research data, but actually consumer data, or indeed other data signals. And I think that's been the big shift, is data used to be a conversation around audience segmentation or driving consumer lifetime value, but more and more you're seeing the brands that went through that sort of Byron Sharp way of working, of reaching everyone in the category, starting to go, what are those signals that people are giving off where I can either prompt them to buy now, or indeed that they're about to enter the category for the product I'm buying. So as an example, someone entering puberty as a female is in the market for female hygiene products. Someone who is about to buy a home is therefore in the market for a larger car or potentially pet products. It's a different way of thinking. It's a much more strategic way of using data. And this sort of quest at the moment to get first-party data on consumers, for the large part, I think for most brands, isn't that important, because it's actually not really going to help them reach a consumer because they're already buying from them anyway. Rather, it's about being smarter about how you harness some of those third-party signals a little bit better. And those tend to make much more of an impact in actually driving sales in the short term. Where the conversation starts with the right signals, I think depends on the brand you're working with, because you have to take a bit of a step back and realize what are the things in someone's life or someone's day-to-day life where you would be more likely to buy the product or be in the market for that product. So some of the more interesting ones that we've been using have been things like someone transitioning from single life to married life, or from a couple to a family, because that seems to signify things like home ownership. Someone may be moving out to the suburbs, upsizing their house. It might be to do with going from a small car to a large car. It might be around mortgages, financials. It might be pet ownership, indeed healthcare. A lot of people start with, how can we get the data on someone who is looking for a home to then advertise for a home, but everyone's looking for that data. So because everyone's looking for the data, there's no competitive advantage and the cost goes up. Rather, it's how can we be a little bit smarter about the data signals that go a bit upstream and start to predict when someone's entering the category, and how do you own those moments. I think that's a flip as well in terms of a media conversation, also into a creative conversation. And for a long time, the creative agencies have really struggled with how can they be smart about how they use data. But actually now I think when we're starting to get those sort of life entry moments, it's a little bit easier to have that conversation. It goes away from going, how can you make a million personalized ads, into let's make an ad for people that are moving house or people that are buying a big car, and just deploying that slightly differently to how we used to.